Okay, and it's 8:05 sharp. So let's begin. Welcome everyone. My name is Brandon Loy. I'm the director of Teacher Panda, which is a community of teachers and teacher trainers who want to share knowledge to people for free in order to give them access, because we know that it's difficult and sometimes expensive to obtain training or access to conferences or even congresses. So this is like a little project that we have, and it is a collaborative project because several institutions are supporting us and they are helping us to provide training and to also spread the voice or the word, sorry, about Teacher Panda. So I would like to say thank you to the CANADEM, Cámara Nacional de la Mujer, because they've been sharing all our content, and they have also been working with us in order to provide training to women and their members here in Michoacan. I would also like to say thank you to Códice, because they have supported us with some of the talks that we wanted to include relating to inclusion in the classroom. Thank you to everyone from English for Life TESOL Academy. They are, oh, I forgot the city, but I think it's actually Arizona as well. And they are working to provide training in the States as well as several cultural experiences outside the country. Thank you to Smart Training in Mexico. They provide affordable training to teachers in a wide range of areas like makeup, English, self-defense. So they cover everything pretty much. I like that a lot. Um, I would also say thank you to Unite for Literacy, because they are working with us in this project. And we actually have one of their project managers with us today. And I would actually like you, Nick, to tell us more about Unite for Literacy, what you do and what your mission is, because it's a project that I love. I actually collaborated with Unite for Literacy 3 or 5 years ago. I don't remember how long ago.
Hmm.
Um, and I believe that what they do is amazing. So I'll let you explain to them what Unite for Literacy is, Nicholas, and welcome. This is your audience.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, I first want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. As soon as you told me about it, I was super excited. I love what you're doing. It's really important work, and I think we could all. I speak for all of us when we say thank you. Um, so I am a project manager at Unite for Literacy. Um, we are a company that has a big mission of eradicating global illiteracy. So basically, we want to help books get in the hands of kids, help families value books, and help kids develop a self-determined habit of reading. And from looking at your comments, it looks like we have a lot of readers on here, which is awesome. I saw some of you have put the names of the books that you're reading: The Secret Life of Pronouns, The Story of Benghazi. Yeah, oh wow, I'm gonna take some of these books and read them later. Oscar Wilde stories, that must be good. Trying to Gain New Habits from Tanya. I just read a book called Atomic Habits. I recommend that if you're into habit formation or anything like that. But thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you guys and hear what kind of questions you have and see where this conversation leads. I don't want this to be me just telling you everything. I would love to hear your feedback, and we can make this more of a discussion than a speech. So should we get started on the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. And they're actually sharing really good books.
I know
So
they
I
are.
think that good
This
is
is
a
great.
small,
I'm gonna.
but it's a small,
All
sorry.
these comments will be saved, right? So I can go back and look at them
Unfortunately
and.
not. For some reason, YouTube deletes them because they're like the live chat for some reason.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to just try to my best to remember. Maybe take some notes.
Oh, I have a former student here, Natalie. Welcome. Well,
Okay.
guys,
Well, go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, okay. So as Nicholas said, what we try to do today is to have more of an intimate kind of conversation with you guys as well. So while he shares his screen, we will also be reading some of your comments, and we are going to address some of the things that you share with us in there. All right?
Yeah, and I kind of just wanted to address how Brandon and I met. I was working, I can give a little bit of background about myself. So I graduated in 2012 from the University of Northern Colorado with a degree in elementary education. And during my college career, I studied abroad and I realized how much I loved to travel. And so when I was doing my student teaching, I was kind of like, I don't think I want to stay in a classroom here in the US and follow that path. So I tried to find a way to combine teaching and traveling. So a few months after graduating, I moved to Colombia and took the CELTA course, which is a course that teaches teachers how to teach English to adults. And that was in Medellin, Colombia. I stayed there for another year, taught English to adults, came back to the US, and then went to Korea, taught kindergarten and elementary school, which was another good experience that led me to where I am now, which is at Unite for Literacy. So I came back to the US, realized that I wanted to develop a Spanish library for kids. And luckily, we already had the platform developed to have an online library. So I went to Mexico, to Guadalajara, and I started trying to adapt these books that we had in English into Spanish, not only the language, but also to be relevant to the culture. So one thing led to another. I ended up meeting Brandon, and he was a huge help in helping translate all these books and making sure that they were relevant to people in Mexico. And Brandon even wrote a book. It's 16 de septiembre, right?
Yeah, you're right. Well,
Yeah.
I adapted one of the books that they already had for the 4th of July. So what I did was to adapt it to Mexican culture and Mexican history as well.
Yeah, so he's been an amazing help, and yeah, just again, thank you for having me. Let's jump into this PowerPoint. I want to tell you all about our company and kind of the science that backs our work and why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay, can you see that, Brandon?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Okay. So Unite for Literacy is a company that wants to eradicate global illiteracy because we believe that too few of children are entering and exiting our school systems without experiencing the joy and power of reading. So our big goal is to create access to books, access to relevant books, and help them develop a self-determined habit of reading. So these are some of the things that we work based on, some of the theories and science behind our work: self-determination, meaningful family engagement, collective impact, and system science. And we'll dive into these a little bit more throughout the presentation. So I just want to ask you, how many books do you think this is? And I want to wait to see some of these responses. How many books do you think are in this bookshelf?
I would say that there are about 1,000, maybe.
1,000, good guess. Okay.
Let's just see what they say.
Let's see.
Oh, Betty says that she's been reading the Harry Potter series.
Oh,
I'm a
nice.
huge fan. I mean, I love those books. Oscar Wilde stories.
Oh yeah, so many good. Thousands.
Thousands.
Uh-huh. Around 3,500, about 600. Okay. These are great guesses. 1,500. 1,500. Ooh, 1251. Wow.
Pretty
Around
specific. Good.
400. So I'm gonna probably disappoint you when I say I don't really know how many books are in this bookshelf, but there's around 1,000. So Brandon, you were spot on. Yeah, these are all great guesses. These are all great guesses. I don't think any of us have the time to go through and count them, right? So a big thing with our company is we do a lot of research, and research has shown that the number of books in the home is the single best predictor of school success and graduation. So we also looked at Mexico statistics because I thought a lot of you would be coming from Mexico. And only 51% of people in Mexico complete upper secondary education. So if we look at the books in the home right here, we can see if you have 30 books in your home, you have about, oh, sorry, if you have, I made a mistake. If you have 0 to 10 books in your home, you have about a 30% chance of getting through 9th grade. And then if you move to 20 books in your home, that really jumps up a lot to about 56, 57%. And then even more so when you go to 70 to 80 books in your home, you have an 80% chance. And then when you look at 100 books, it really starts to round that curve. And you have a 90% chance of graduating 9th grade. So this is a reason why we focus on the number of books in the home and why that's so important for our work. So if we go to the next slide, we did some research on Mexico, and we realized that 40, you can see this big blue bar graph, and 43% of the homes in Mexico are averaging 0 to 10 books. So that means 43% of families in Mexico and kids in Mexico are around this 30%, that's a 30% chance of completing 9th grade, which is not where we want to be. And it's not much better in the US. Several countries are right around this same average. So it's pretty bad. And if we look at the percentage of kids with 100 or more books in the home, which would be these last 3 columns, that's 8%. So only 8% are right here at 90% chance of graduating 9th grade, which is, it's really low. And what I think we all probably want to focus on is giving our kids the best chance to be successful in school and in life. So we said, okay, 100 books seems to be the magic number for us. That's our magic number, because that's where the curve really starts to flatten. And so every book matters so much from 0 to 100. I mean, if you go from 200 to 300, yeah, you might gain a little bit, maybe from 91 to 92% chance. But from 30 to 40, we're jumping like, or from 0 to 20, we're jumping 10%. So it's really important that we give access to books. So that's what 100 books looks like. Doesn't look like too many, right? Seems doable. Seems like we can help kids get 100 books in their home. We also created this map. It's called the Book Desert Map. And so we took the census data and we combined it with other information to create this map that shows what counties are the average number of books in their home. So this dark red is 0 to 10 books. You can see a lot in the South and different pockets over here. They have a lot of them average 0 to 10 books. And if we move up to the next shade of yellow, it's orangish, that's 10 to 20 books. And then the next shade, yellow, 11 to 20, or 11, sorry, 20 to 30 books. So it doesn't look good. And we call this a book desert. And what we want to do is create book gardens. So we want to turn this whole map green, and not only for the US, but for the world. So here's another example. This is where I live, in Phoenix, Arizona. And when you zoom in on our city, you can see that there's certain parts of our city that are obviously a lot better than the others. So these green areas, they average probably more than 70 or 80 books in their home, sometimes 100. And then you see this big pocket of red who have 0 to 10. So we compared that to test scores. And if you look, these maps look pretty similar. If you look at the test scores of scoring at or above proficient, the same areas that don't have books are not scoring at or above proficient, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but we're like, wow, this is real. This has a strong correlation, supports our work. So we want to focus on this. So that's around 10 books. I think it's like 7 or 8, but that's how many books are in the homes of all these people. And if we go back to this, that's a huge number. And if you scale this to the whole world, I mean, it's just an outstanding number that we can work on creating a solution for that. So we thought, what if we could bring the books to the families? Even though a lot of families live in poverty, they have a lot of different struggles that are up against a lot of different disadvantages. We think we can get them books online. So we asked, I mean, we've read a lot of data, and we realized that even families that live in poverty, the majority of them have a smartphone. And so if you have a smartphone, you have access to the internet. And if you have access to the internet, we said, we'll give you access to hundreds of relevant books that you can read with your kids. Any questions so far? Brandon, how are you?
Actually, the data that you have shown us, it is really sad, because just a small change in the number of books that children have access to can actually imply a huge difference in their educational level. So just a small change can actually have a huge impact. So I already shared the link to the desert map on the chat box for those of you who want to read a little bit more. And just as Nicholas said, you have access to it on the phone. Most people nowadays, even those who come from an economically disadvantaged family, can actually have access to a phone. At least in Mexico, it is accessible.
Right. Yeah, and we know there's nothing that replaces a physical book. Like having a book in your hand and turning the pages and everything that comes with reading a book and a physical book. Like you can't replace that with digital books, but you can this solution is better than nothing. You know, it'd be hard to get thousands of physical books to every family in the world. So we thought, let's start here, and then we'll work our way towards getting more physical books, but also let's give families the opportunity to read thousands of books online. So we also, here's a little bit more research for you if you're not too bored already. NAEP did a study, and they did it across 27 countries, and they asked hundreds of questions, but two questions we really focused on. And those two questions are the number of books you have in your home and how often you read for fun. So if we look at this, I'm going to try to walk you through this data that we analyzed and put together a kind of a graphic so you can better analyze it. So if you have 0 to 10 books, we're in the red here. 11 to 25, orange. 26 to 100, yellow. 100 plus, you're in the green. Then we also broke it down into how often you read for fun. So if you hardly ever read for fun, where you're a triangle. And if you read every day, you're a diamond. So if you look at this green diamond, that means you have more than 100 books in your home and you read every day. In contrast, if you have less than 100 books in your home and hardly ever read, that's a triangle that is red. Okay, does that make sense? Good, okay. So we have 16 subgroups. Now let's look at the graph of how many kids in these subgroups scored at or above proficient on reading tests. I know we have a lot of teachers in here, so it's good to look at testing scores, because I know that maybe it's not the focus that you would like to be like to have in your classroom, but it's the reality for right now, unfortunately. So if we look at the people who have 0 to 10 books in their home and never read, their percentage of scoring at or above proficient is around, 9 or 10%. And then in contrast, people who have 100 books in their home and read every day, they're about at 70%. So a huge, huge difference. But this is the one that I like to focus on. Families that have 0 to 10 books in their home but read every day. They're still, wait, sorry, let me go back one second. They have 100 books in their home and they hardly ever read. So even if they have the 100 books and they don't read, they're still at way more of an advantage than this group that doesn't have any books in their home. And you might say that that's correlation and not causation. So what we did is we put it against some other factors that people think impact scores and success in school. So one of them is 8th grade, or is parents didn't finish high school. So parents' education level. But you can still see the parents, these are all kids that their parents didn't finish high school. And you can see if they have 100 books and they read every day, they're still at way more of an advantage than the kids that don't have books and don't read every day. And that's the same thing for free and reduced lunch, which is how we kind of measure the poverty line. So same pattern, we see the same pattern. Kids that have 100 books in their home and they read every day, they're beating the odds. They have a way better chance of scoring at or above proficient. So we like to think of things in systems as well, systems thinking. So a system is a group of elements interacting to have a purpose. And so we said, what are the elements for us? It's an abundance of books. What's the interaction? A self-determined habit of reading. And what's the purpose? It's to become a lifelong reader, which is the biggest thing that shows a lifelong learner. How many of you are lifelong learners? Are you, Brandon?
Well, yeah, I'm a teacher, so I have to be constantly learning a lot. And actually, some of the comments say that they don't read for pleasure, but they actually read it. They read for work or for studying, and that they read every day for that reason. So I consider that they are also lifelong readers in a certain way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Reading for fun was the only question that the NAEP survey asked, but I think that's for kids. When you get to an adult, I'm the same. I don't read for fun necessarily. I read for information and for meaning, and to continually be learning and improving. So you could change that to reading for meaning or purpose or learning. So I don't want to get too much into this, but this is another tool that we've been looking into, the Bass diffusion model. So there's this thing, I don't know if any of you have read it, but there's a book that talks about crossing the chasm. And so it's about adoption rate. And what we really want is to cross from innovators to people that are adopting at a more steady rate. And so we have some influence on what we can do to increase these potential adopters to be adopters, and that'll be a cycle that is reinforcing. So as soon as we get this adopters to half, maybe 30%, then this really is going to fuel it, and we're going to hit this S curve and really make a big difference. So as soon as we understand that reading is important, and the number of books in the home is important, and I consider all of you innovators because you're here watching this right now. I don't think any laggards would be on this live webinar learning more in their free time. So we're all right here. And what we need to do is convey this message to other people so that we can, this is adoption from word of mouth. So if we keep talking about how important this is, then soon we're going to enter this part of the S curve and just take off. So self-determination theory is another science that we're looking at. I want to ask you, Brandon, what is your experience with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
Okay, actually, this is a topic that we discuss a lot in teaching. So we say that extrinsic motivation are the things outside of me that push me towards achieving an objective or goal. And the things that motivate me from the inside, like, I don't know, like setting myself a challenge or just interest or curiosity are what motivates me to achieve that goal personally. So for example, external or extrinsic motivation for my students would be that they need to pass an exam, or that they need to keep their parents happy because they're learning English. That would be an example.
Right, right. Do you think what you're doing right now with this whole live webinar series is intrinsic or extrinsic?
It was completely intrinsic because I just wanted to have like something that was worthwhile. and to give it to society. So it was completely like from within. Nobody told me, nobody like pushed me to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And what we found is that intrinsic motivation is so much more valuable. I'm sure the person that was reading about habits has heard about this. It's sustainable, it lasts a lot longer. Extrinsic motivation is more like, if you do this, you get a reward. And unfortunately, our school systems are teaching reading using extrinsic motivation. And so I'm just going to go over the three components of self-determination theory. Competence, which is our basic need to feel mastery over our life circumstances. So we really are intrinsically motivated to be good at what we do. Nobody wants to be bad at what they do. Everybody wants to feel like competent. The second one is autonomy. That just means that we have the power to make our own decisions, make our own choices, and that is so much more motivating than somebody saying you have to do this and making the decisions for you. So as soon as somebody says you have to do something, anything, you automatically, your self-determination goes down. And the third is relatedness, the motivation to feel socially connected. So we are social beings, and we like to see ourselves in our environment and in the things that we're surrounded by. So if I'm a person from Kenya and I'm going to school in the US and I see all these children's books with just little white kids and these little suburban houses, you're not going to feel that connection as if you saw a house in Kenya with your traditions and your culture and your food and everything, all that is represented. So that's a big part of our work. And unfortunately, our school system is taking away a lot of these. So for you teachers, I challenge you to just think about this. For example, competence. When we put kids in reading groups, they know if they're in the low reading group. They know if they're in the high reading group. And if they're in the low reading group, their self-determination is going to go down because they don't feel competent. So instead, try to meet them where they are and not think that one is better than the other, but we're all in a process of learning and growing. Autonomy, as soon as we say you have to read 20 minutes a night or you have to log 2 books a night, then we're taking away their autonomy. They're not choosing to do that. And then relatedness, which I talked about, the number or the books that we're giving them that might not be the right book. Not every book is suitable for every child. We say the right book at the right time for the right child. So we really want to work on these 3 things to help these students feel intrinsically motivated. They feel self-determination to read. And this can be accomplished, but we have to have some conscious thought about how we can do so. Any questions there?
They actually have some really good comments. Extrinsic motivation is an outward push that can initiate motivation for reading. But along the process, the intrinsic motivation should be developed, or the reading habit wouldn't be formed or wouldn't be sustainable.
Exactly.
They also say that to have curiosity to know more about whatever you're interested in and set a goal in order to find as much material of the theme or the topic. So I agree with you guys. Unfortunately, when you get to school, the teachers tell you, okay, read this book that may not be interesting, that may not be something you can relate with, and you have to read it.
Yes,
So
yes.
I don't know if that
And
happened to you, Nicholas.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Miriam just said the autonomy does not appear from nothing. I think someone has to motivate us. What we like to say is invite. We like to invite kids to read, and we help them find the right book at the right time. And we can also be role models. So showing the children that we enjoy reading and that we get a lot from reading and we're reading for meeting, that is a lot more important than saying, here's this book, you have to read it. I'm just reading some of these comments.
Well, Rebecca is asking if there is a structure for developing a reading habit while inculcating these three principles. So I would say that more than a structure, or it is more of a motivation. I mean, me as a teacher, I can try to find books that my students can relate to and that have topics that are interesting to them. And at the same time, I can actually encourage them to read them by, as Nicholas mentioned, setting the example like, okay, guys, look, I'm reading this book, for example. It is about this. Are you reading something right now? Which books
Right.
do you recommend to read when you have kids between 12 to 17 and they're going to proficiency test on the FCE or any other B1, B2, C1 IELTS to score high on the reading exam? Okay, this one is a little bit more specific. It has to do with testing. There are many editorials who have grader books, so my advice would be to find some grader books that are specific for those levels, and some of them even include activities for that. However, in this case, we wouldn't be following the self-determination theory. However, their motivation is more focused towards passing the exam, so they want to do it because of that. So it's a different scenario.
Exactly. But that's a lot different than a teacher telling them they have to pass an exam and they have to read these books. So I think if you have the opportunity to, if the student or the person who is looking to pass these tests is intrinsically motivated to pass these tests, they have a reason that they want to do it for themselves, you can help them find the right book at the right time. And you could do that by doing some research and finding out reviews, what style fits their style, and seeing just what connects with them, but not forcing anything upon them.
Something that one of my teachers did when I was in primary school, and that I believe that really motivated me, it was that my teacher created a library with books that we as students brought. So I was like, okay, you know what, guys, this book that I have, I read it and I liked it. So most of the books that we had in there had already been read by someone else. So it was motivating for us to share what we had read already, and also to discover other things that could be interesting and then talk about it with our classmates. So
absolutely. I think that's a great example of that structure question that somebody asked. If you just incorporate the children's decisions in choosing books, choice is huge, and have free reading time. All right, so I'm going to move on to meaningful family engagement and collective impact. So we partner with communities. This is our library, and I'm actually going to show you how to use this. We partner with communities to create books that are meaningful and culturally and linguistically relevant to their specific community. So this is completely free, and I'm just going to share with you. I don't know how many of you are educators of young children, but if you go to uniteforliteracy.com, this is what's going to come up, and it's completely free. We have over 600 books written in English and Spanish. They're almost all nonfiction, and we're really just trying to cultivate a love of reading. We're not trying to say like this. We don't level our books or anything like that, but we just want kids to enjoy our library. So I'm going to just demonstrate how to read one book. This is Animals That Swim. You can choose a narration here, and we have over 40 different languages in our library, but let's just do Spanish for now. And you can listen. Can you hear that, Brandon?
Actually, we cannot listen to it because there is
Okay.
a special option. But the idea of the narration is that you can listen to it in both languages, depending on what you choose. It is important to remember that most of these books are aimed towards emergent readers. So what's the age
Yes.
that you mentioned, Nicholas? Sorry?
Yeah, we say 3 to 8, but it could be for any emergent reader. So I'll get to this in a minute, but I was learning Spanish, or still am learning Spanish, but when I was at the beginning stages, I used the Spanish library to help me understand that. So it doesn't have to be 3 to 8 year olds. It's people that are emergent readers in the language, the written language, or the narrated language. So all of these books are 9 pages. We try to use really high quality images to engage the kids. And we just encourage families to use this tool to help their children develop a self-determined habit of reading. And it doesn't have to be that we read it straight through. Like the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we could just have a conversation about this picture for a couple minutes, you know, like, did you know horses swim? Where are they swimming? Or you think they're in the ocean? What's this? Do you think they can swim for a long time? Like, it's just a conversation. So we're really just trying to give parents and teachers an opportunity to engage with their child in a meaningful way and help them develop a love of books and reading.
And what you mentioned is really important because many people think that reading is just sitting like still for 2 hours, just passing pages. And that's not the idea. The idea that we want to share with you guys is that books can actually be social, as you mentioned. They can be discussed, they can be shared, they can be actually, I don't know, debated. So as he mentioned, just you can display the page on the whiteboard, or you can show the iPad to your kid and then have a conversation about it so that you can actually get them interested in the topic as well.
Yes, exactly. And I just read a comment. I personally grew up loving to read, but when I got to college, every time I'm required to read any material, I would always feel the strong aversion against it. Exactly. I think that's so many of our experiences. I didn't enjoy reading from the time I was probably in 3rd, 2nd grade until beginning of university. And I think that's because the school system took away my self-determination. But luckily I had a role model that helped me find the right book at the right time. And that just changed everything for me. And I became a reader again. And so I think it's really important to recognize what Rebecca just said is what we were just talking about. When somebody makes you read something, you might not feel that same motivation.
If someone in the audience is familiar with Montessori, I was actually educated with that system when I was in preschool. And I believe that that's the point where I actually started enjoying reading. I know that many teachers are against children reading at that age, but in that school, they really motivated us. And the way in which they did it is that they had a wide range of books for children to select.
Yes, yes,
and
choice
they
is
will be
huge.
able to choose what they wanted to hear about or what they wanted to read about. And it really helped us because it wasn't what my teacher was imposing to me as a kid. It was more about what was interesting because of the pictures or because of the drawings or because of the title or the topic. So giving some freedom to the students and to kids to choose what they want to read is what is going to really motivate them and to not hate it as well.
Right, exactly, exactly. Um, and another really important thing is supporting, it's not just supporting the children, but supporting the families. So we like to think of a family literacy model, and there's 4 components to a family literacy model, but 2 that are surprising to a lot of people, I think, are parent education, which is helping parents understand how they can best be a parent. And then the other one is adult education. And adult education is meeting the parent where they're at to give them resources to grow and to learn. So we have a lot of families in the U.S. and everywhere in the world that uh, maybe don't speak the language of instruction. So we have a lot of families that speak, let's say, Burmese, and they come to the U.S., whether it be by choice or if they're seeking asylum, and they don't have access to the resources. So another thing that our company is trying to work on is adult education. And so I'm going to just show you an example. This is our COVID-19 library, and this is for adults, but it's still in the same format as a picture book. The difference is they can, it's the content's for adults and they can listen to it in their home language. So let's say it was a Somali family and they want to learn more about staying healthy during this time. They can read this book and then listen to it in their home language. So that's another important part about family literacy is supporting the adults and the family. Oh, I also wanted to show all of you how to navigate to the Spanish library. So this is the narration, this little bubble with the circle in it. And then this with the pencil is where we can choose a different language. And currently we just have Spanish, and we have over 200 books in Spanish now. And so people can go here to read books in Spanish. And I'm just gonna, can I show your book, Brandon? So Brandon
Sure, why
wrote
not?
this book. Brandon wrote this book, and we can come here and read it. It's completely free for anyone. And we always have this kind of call to action at the end for the parents. So write ways to have fun in your family, read books about celebrations in other places. So this is for the parents to kind of have a takeaway. And I think Brandon, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and what I like about this call to action at the end is that if you're a teacher, you can actually use these as a little example of activities that you can do with your children so they can engage in reading as well.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I saw somebody put El Principito. All of our books, El Principito is amazing, but all of our books are in-house original books. So we don't have any of like the normal fairy tales or children's books. These are all original books. So hopefully you can find some different titles that you enjoy as well. Another person said so educating the parents is key to children's literacy. Yes, so that is a huge component. That's a huge component because if you think about parents, they always want what's best for their kids. And sometimes they don't know what they don't know. So educating the parents that reading should be a fun thing, that It should be a daily thing. It should be a time where your child feels comfortable and relaxed. Very, very important. Okay, so I think I showed you all this is an example of all the different languages that we have. Over 40 now. This is an older image, but now we have over 40. And then the other part is working with communities to create relevant books. So we talked a little bit about one of the components of self-determination is relatedness. So kids want to see themselves in books, and kids want to see their cultures and languages represented in books. So we work with cultures, people in different cultures to create books about themselves. This is an example that I love. This is here in Arizona. We work with the Gila River Indian community, and one of the traditions that they have is they go out every year and they pick these cactus fruits. They use these long poles that are actually made from the cactus to get down the fruit. So not only do these kids see themselves in the books, but they're also using their language, and they're doing it in a they're kind of like trickling their words into these books, which is their decision. So this word right here, Cupid, that's the tool that they're using, but that's the tool that's written in their language. And that's the same with the fruit right here, this word. And so we try to meet communities where they are and create books that are relevant for them. And so we would be happy to work with any of you if you have an idea for a project to bring more books and more relevant books to your community. This is just a family that's enjoying some of the books that we also give out. We send books home, and we can also start a project like that in your community where we mailed their books to your families. And then this is the Spanish library that we've already talked about. So I know a lot of you are teachers, and I thought that this was a relevant graph that all students with 100 books and a self-determined habit of reading are scoring way above the national average. So the big takeaway here, I think, is help families get access to books and help children develop a self-determined habit of reading through intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. And here's our links. I'm sure Brandon is going to share those with you.
Yeah, you will be able to find them in the description box of this video. Remember that the webinars stay online, so you can actually access this website again, or this YouTube video, sorry, again, as many times as you want. And you will find those resources in there. I think that one of the most important things that we have talked about today is about not taking that self-determination from our students and actually allowing children to make their own decisions. What is important for us to address is that children are smart, and sometimes we consider that they cannot make their own decisions, or we sometimes believe that they are not capable of choosing what they want to read, or that something is too complex for them. However, if we give them that freedom, if we allow their curiosity to look for information, to find it, to explore it, I think that that's what's going to help them the most in order to acquire this habit or develop this habit.
I agree. This is the last slide that I have. It's a quote from Viktor Frankl, which is actually the book that I'm reading right now, Man's Search for Meaning. Reading can really enrich our lives, and I just encourage all of you to find the best ways to help our children learn to love reading like all of us do, and to help them be prepared for success and living a meaningful life.
Okay. Thank you, Nicholas. So in here, we have really addressed the importance of developing reading skills in our students. And in here, what we need to identify is how, now that we know how important it is, how can I actually encourage my students to do it? How can I actually encourage my kids in my family to start reading? And one of the things that we need to consider, first of all, is actually letting go control in the classroom, for example, and letting kids bring their own materials. Why don't you let your students bring the books they have at home? Like, okay, what, you know what? Bring your fairy tales or the books that you have read before, bring them to class, and even they can actually create their own materials, their own activities for their classmates to use in the class. So my question and what I want you to start reflecting on is, how can I actually, or what can I do in my classroom to motivate my students to read? Now that I know about self-determination theory, now that I know that children need to be related to something and that they need to feel it personal. There is
Right.
this TED talk. I don't remember if it's Chera Bautista. I don't remember the speaker, and she says that she was born in Africa, and that she was
Yeah.
reading books, and all the characters in the books were white, and they would play in
Yeah.
the snow, and they would eat apples. And the stories that she would write about were exactly about that, about white kids with eating apples and playing in the snow. And the reality was that in her context, you wouldn't see any of that, because children didn't look like that.
Right.
Children in her context wouldn't eat apples, they would eat mangoes. And the kind of conversations they would have wouldn't be similar at all to what these stories were about. So why don't you find something that your students can relate to, that they can feel identified with, so that you can actually
Yes.
start motivating them, instead of just making them read The Little Prince, which is a really good book. Why not making them read something that they can actually feel related and interested in? That's
Yes.
my
I completely agree. um. Oh, sorry. Were you still?
Yes, I was waiting for you, Nick. I thought that you were going to say something. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if we could open it up for questions. I would love to hear some feedback and see if we can answer some questions, because just like all of you, we're here to learn. I would love to hear what you guys have to say and see if we can just have a
So
little bit of a conversation.
many of them have comments about the website. They wanted the website. As I told you, I'm going to include it in the description box.
Yeah.
Some of them say that Unite for Literacy is interesting as it has audios. Any questions you have, guys, please write it in the description. Sorry, in the live chat, so that I can address them as well.
We also have an app. If you search on iOS or Android, it's called Unite Books,
Okay.
and it's also completely free.
What I want to remind you guys as well, for those of you who are teaching languages, if a student doesn't have this ability developed in their first language, it is going to be way more difficult for them to transfer those skills to a second language. So it is important that we develop that skill in our students, so that it's easier for them to perform in English as well. Sanchez, for example, shares that he's forced to assign books to his students and to make them read a specific amount of hours. How bad is it?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I think a lot of teachers, even myself as a teacher when I was in the classroom, was forced to do the same thing. And it's, I mean, you kind of have to work within that framework, but I think while you're in the classroom, you can still have this underlying message of reading is not a task. You have choice, and let's just all enjoy it instead of making it an assignment. So you can only control what you can control. I understand that a lot of curriculum and school systems are forcing teachers to send reading logs and all that, but do what you can.
Okay, they also have this question. They want to know about the team who write the original stories. They want to know more about them. You can actually find that information as well in the website. He's going to explain something about them in a second. But you can find all that information in the website as well. It talks about the team, who the authors are. And something that I would like to address in here, what I like about these books is that the pictures change. For example, the library in Mexico, you're going to find characters that Mexican people can relate with. So they can actually find something that gives them a sense of inclusion as well.
Yeah, so a lot of our writers are people with experience, years and years of experience with early childhood education. We also partner with nonprofits so that they can convey the message that they want to send to kids. For example, we partner with World Oceans Day. It's a nonprofit, and they write books about how to keep our oceans clean and what we can do day to day to make our oceans healthier. So we have several different authors, like Brandon, for example, who adapted the 4th of July book, which was our Independence Day in the U.S., to 16 de septiembre. And so it's things like that. If you're interested in writing a book, we'll give you my email and contact me. We can make it happen.
They're asking, how can we make reading more interactive and social? Something that I would suggest is that instead of just giving them reading tasks, you can actually just have discussion groups. So you can actually say like, okay, let's choose together a book that we're all interested in, and then let's talk about it. How did you feel while you were reading it? Because the emotional aspect of reading is also important.
Yes.
Tell me, what did you learn? What surprised you? And making it personal. And these kind of discussions actually allow for skills development, but at the same time, they also encourage children to not see reading as an obligation, but more of a time in which they can be themselves and enjoy themselves. I'm going to share a personal experience I have. A long time ago, I lived in Mexico City, and my roommate, she was British, and she had a really young kid. And since the baby was born, she would read to him every day. And she would find books that would be interesting to him. And she would actually make it interactive, like making noises, making, I don't know, like different voices, changing the pitch. And in this way, the kid now is so interested in reading that he actually makes her read all the titles at the end of the movies, because he's interested in knowing what it says. So I believe that this organic approach to fostering reading habits is what we need in the classroom as well. Just like fostering curiosity.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to read through a couple of these comments and just give a really short answer. What do you think about audiobooks? I think they're great, but it's not a replacement for reading. The next one, my daughter is interested in arts. What title could you recommend her in order to understand the artist environment? I think that you would be the the professional and knowing which title she would enjoy the most. But we do have several books in our library about the arts. One of them is I'm an Artist, and it depends on her reading level and what she's interested in, but definitely check out our library and see if you can find anything. How to give us more ideas on how to make reading more interactive and more social. That's a great question. I think inviting kids to read, making sure it's intrinsic motivation, and also not having an agenda when you read a book with a child. It's more about a guide to just have a conversation with a child. So you don't need to say like, we need to finish the book. Let the kid turn the pages. If they turn back a few pages, that's fine. Don't try to control the environment. Just let it be more natural. Our school is under a reading program. It would have been great, but instead of loving reading, the kids would end up reading the shortest read so they could get the award for the most books read. Yeah. So that's a perfect example of extrinsic motivation. And unfortunately, that's a system that a lot of us are working in. And so you can do your part by understanding intrinsic motivation and helping your children or your students, what the cases might be, to enjoy books by themselves. But the problem with that is, yes, since they are so extrinsically motivated, as soon as that reward goes away, they're probably going to feel like not so interested in books. Yeah, so I think I've covered all the questions that I can see on my end.
Mario Gomez is asking if we recommend assessing reading, like with quizzes and tests. I think that we as language teachers, we have to cover both. First of all, yes, we need to give them activities that foster skill development and soft skills development. For example, I don't know, identifying main ideas from secondary ideas, or summarizing, scanning, scheming, all that. We do need to do that because we're teachers and we need to develop those soft skills in a second language. However, there is also space for us to give them opportunity to just read and just to have discussions without assessing them, because extensive reading is a type of reading that we neglect most of the times. So it is important that we foster extensive reading as well, reading for pleasure,
yeah,
and allowing them to have discussions on this rather than just have them know that they're going to be assessed. Through a discussion, we also know whether they read it or not, whether they understood what they had to read or not. And it's not necessary to just give them a task all the time. Sometimes just discussions are more than enough.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some form of assessment might be necessary, but stuff like how many words a minute you can read, and if you can make nonsense words, like just pronounce them. I don't lean that far in that direction. I think comprehension is important, and helping children develop those skills to comprehend and to read for meaning is a great thing. So if you assess it, maybe have that goal in mind.
Alex Corral is sharing that he has a comprehensive reading dice. I have never heard about them, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure that many of us are going to now do some research on it. And well, if there aren't any other questions, I think we covered them all. I would like to say thank you to you, Nicholas, for sharing this time with us, for sharing this useful data, because I believe that all of us know how important it is to read, but we didn't know the impact that it could have to just give them access to books to children. We just realized that with the data that he has shown to us, that just a small number in the difference of books can make a huge impact on our students. So now that you have the resources, now that you have some strategies, now that we have opened up for discussion and that we shared our personal experience with reading, it is now your turn to say, okay, what can I do with my students and how can I foster this? So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Unite for Literacy for collaborating with us. And don't forget to subscribe. If you want to know more about them, you will find their website on the description box. And you don't forget to check their website, their Facebook page, their Instagram page. And well, thank you guys. See you in the next one.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening and helping me think more about this too. So it's been a great experience. Happy reading.
Happy reading. Bye.